This is Monkey World in Dorset, the largest ape and monkey rescue centre on the planet. Today on Monkey Life, it's a race against time as the team try to stop an infection spreading amongst the chimpanzees.
If you can get them on right antibiotics, and if they leave them alone, there's every chance they'll heal up. But there are two big ifs there.
The orangutans are watching their weight, and the lemurs and macaques meet for the very first time.
Even though those guys don't really belong together, if it's good for the remaining years for those individuals, why not give it a go?
Inside Hananya's chimp house, vet John Lewis is visiting 7-year-old Ben, who's suffering from a serious foot infection. A few days ago, the primate care staff noticed that a small cut on Ben's foot had developed a serious infection. He was isolated from the rest of the group and treated with antibiotics. Today, John wants to check that the infection is clearing up and that there's no more treatment necessary.
It's not the right colour, is it, my friend? Not really. Did these all start as small nicks and wounds, which you just think would heal up?
Yeah.
Perfectly naturally. I mean, to be honest, most of that tissue, although there's a huge amount of erosion of the skin, etc., most of the tissue underneath doesn't look desperately necrotic. It's pink, it's granulation tissue there, and so I'm in an infection. Of course there is.
John can see that Ben's foot is healing, but the skin is very fragile, so Ben can only be treated with medication.
If you try and operate on tissue which is sort of looks crumbly, it is crumbly, stitches will just pull through that, and it's superficially infected, you will end up with a surgical wound that's not closing properly, the stitches will break down, and it'll get infected. So leave it alone until you can get rid of all that infection. And if he loses a bit of the toe tip, he loses a bit of the toe tip. That's really, to my way of thinking, that's of no consequence whatsoever. He'll still be a chimp, he'll still run around like a loony, etc., with 5 toes, 4 toes, or 3.5. When you lost half a finger, it's not bothering you, is it?
Not a lot.
But although it's good news for Ben, John is suddenly confronted by a much bigger problem.
It's just her last shamak out there.
The other chimps have developed similar-looking sores and have been placed in isolation as well.
Which makes you wonder what's growing in them.
Including Ben's half-sister, Pip.
She had 1 or 2 scrapes on her, as chimps do, as they always do. And Ben has been attending to them and picking at them.
The skin lesions look extremely sore and inflamed, just like Ben's.
Same with her, small wounds turning into scabs. Okay.
Everyone is baffled, and they have no idea how contagious the infection might be. Skin samples have been rushed to the lab for analysis. It's a race against time to diagnose the problem and prevent any more animals from getting the infection.
If you can get them on right antibiotics, and if they leave them alone, there's every chance they'll heal up. But there are two big ifs there.
Later, the lab results are in, and the team are even more puzzled.
It is still rather confusing, though. They have identified another bacteria from Pip.
In the orangutan nursery, primate care staff Colin and Penny are checking everyone's weight. But trying to get 4 lively orang toddlers to simply step on board the scales isn't that easy.
No, they don't make life particularly easy. They tend to turn it into a bit of a game. So quite often we can be in here for up to an hour.
Winding up the keepers is much more fun than getting weighed. But there's a serious reason for getting an idea of their pounds and ounces.
It's a good way of measuring their progress, measuring how they're growing, how they're getting on. but it's quite useful to have a weight so that we can actually plot a chart of their growth progress. It's also very useful if we ever have to anaesthetise them for any medical treatment. We need an accurate weight so that we can give them the correct dose of anaesthetic. We don't want to overdose or underdose them. So it's quite useful for these two reasons.
This is not an easy job, but somebody has to do it. And Colin and Penny have a plan.
What I do is either myself or Penny will get on the scales first of all, get our own weight, and then obviously we try and hold on to the kids as best we can. Then just, you know, subtract what will be their weight from the final total. And as usual, they always come to the person that doesn't have the scales. That's the, thank you. That's the traditional method.
On the face of it, it's a perfectly sensible plan. But Linger has other ideas.
The idea with this as well is to make it into a kind of a game. If you really focus and really concentrate on, you know, I must hold you and I must get away from you, they don't really respond that well. You like to keep one hand attached to something, so it's quite tricky. You can catch them as they swing, thus. And then you've got a couple of seconds to get an idea of the weight.
Sorry, Colin. Confident as you sound, that's not going to happen. It's time for Penny to step into the arena.
Let the professionals do it.
Professionals do it, OK.
Oh, I've put on half a stone. 9. That's my hair you're holding on to there. He's about 15.
Eventually, all 4 toddlers are weighed, more or less, and they're all looking fit and healthy. And now, and only now, does Linger decide that the scales look interesting after all. If only she'd decided that an hour ago. There are 28 groups of primates living at Monkey World, and staff work hard to ensure that troops are well matched and live happily together as a unit. But sometimes things just don't work out, and monkeys have to be moved. Today, the team are hoping to resolve some gripes amongst a few of the park's older residents by creating a brand new group in a vacant enclosure.
Rather than leaving the house in the enclosure that's beautiful, laying there empty, waiting for our next rescue, we thought the geriatric stump-tailed macaques, which would be Coco, Gerald, and Roland, we thought that they would actually go in here really quite well, and they can scoot around. And well, we have 4 remaining stroppy female old-timer lemurs. They were making the boys' lives a nightmare up in Malagasy, so we thought that the stump-tails could live in the house and in the enclosure down low. The ringtails could bounce around above them as they will, and that everybody will sort of just coexist.
In the wild, lemurs live in Madagascar, an island off the southeastern coast of Africa, and macaques like stump-tails live in southern Asia. So there are normally 4,600 miles and the Indian Ocean separating the two species. This will be the first time that these old monkeys will have met one another, and everyone's anxious to see how they'll react.
Even though those guys don't really belong together, if it's good for the remaining years for those individuals, why not give it a go? I mean, that's what we do here. So what we're doing is looking at the welfare of the 2 groups and thinking that actually they might benefit from a little bit of stimulation from each other. For us, that's the main thing, is keeping their minds busy, keeping them occupied, and keeping them in a good environment that meets their needs.
First out of the travelling boxes are the macaques. They just get along with what they have to do and take it all in their stride.
More at market, huh?
Now it's time to let the lemurs into the house. But they seem to be a lot more anxious. They're released into a bedroom alongside the macaques, so that the 2 groups can check each other out from a safe distance. The elderly macaques don't seem in the slightest bit bothered by their new roommates. And the lemurs have calmed down. So the team decide it's time to open the linking door and let the groups interact. Roland makes his way into the other room, followed by Gerald. But the lemurs are still tentative. Coco's also a little more wary of the new neighbours and hangs back. But then she spots something. Gerald's tucking into lunch, and that's enough to change her mind. And as the macaques settle down to enjoy their meal, the lemurs rapidly realise that they're missing out. There are 248 mouths to feed at Monkey World. Making sure that all of the animals are provided with a healthy, balanced diet is no mean feat. And the primates get through 1.5 tons of fruit and veg every week. There are a grand total of 94 capuchins now living at Monkey World, and they're fed a main meal twice a day, with some nice snacks in between. Today, the bachelor group's afternoon treat is walnuts. It's the first time the group have tried them, and as everybody knows, a walnut is a very tough nut to crack. Capuchins are the most intelligent of the small monkeys, and they're extremely inquisitive. So this isn't just a snack, it's an intelligence test. The capuchins know that there's food inside these tough outer shells, they just have to work out how to get to it. In the wild, capuchins have all kinds of ways to crack shells open. They bang them open on trees, and they use rocks as hammers. And it seems that these monkeys know instinctively just how to do it. As suddenly, Bruce cracks it. And once they've seen how it's done, it's not long before the others get the idea. This is a world away from the capuchins' previous lives confined in small laboratory cages. It's amazing to see these monkeys acting in such a completely natural manner. And once you've got the knack, walnuts are a cinch. But not for everybody. Poor Felipe just cannot get the hang of it. And by the looks of things, it's going to keep him busy until the next meal. Later, grumpy macaque Roland gets into a food fight with one of his new housemates. And keeper Toby finds out if Max the marmoset is sticking to his diet.
Losing 50 grams to us might not seem a lot, but to them it's quite a big portion of their body weight.
Over in the office, Alison, Jeremy and wildlife vet John Lewis are checking the lab results from both Ben's infected foot and the mysterious lesions that are breaking out on some of the other chimps in Hananya's group.
It is still rather confusing.
Yeah.
They're hoping that the lab results will tell them what the sores are and how the chimps got them.
Dr. John. Right now, John's talking to the lab, and we're trying to find sort of a history and a pattern. We know sort of what bacteria Ben has had on his wounds. We've taken a sample from Pip as well, because she has a couple of little spots, but nothing as bad as Ben. But John's, I think, trying to get to the origins of why these sores started in the first place.
The results from the lab show that some of the chimps have the same infection as Ben, but there are a few other infections as well. Fortunately, it turns out that all the infections are caused by common bacteria. And this information gives the team the vital clue they need to work out what's happened. The animals at the park live in open spaces that simulate their natural environment. And just like in the wild, they're exposed to a variety of bugs and bacteria every day.
Wildlife comes in and out, and there's all sorts of contaminants, if you will, that are present just in every day in the world. But it's not a problem for us if we're generally healthy.
The team know that Ben is stressed out. He's been dealing with joining a new group after all, and this has clearly made him more susceptible to an infection on his cut. The fact that it's on his foot hasn't helped to keep it clean. The chimps here lead such sociable lives, it was only a matter of time before the others in his group picked it up.
They're all going outside and encountering bird feces and everything else, as well as grooming each other and sticking their fingers and lips and mouths into each other's wounds and picking them and that kind of thing. They're all sharing whatever bacteria that they have.
The lab results show that Ben's initial infection spread through the group, causing those lesions. And then other bugs present in the environment attacked the already vulnerable chimps, adding to their woes.
So most of these things that we're encountering are just normal environmental bacterias that are around and about in the world, and it's whether or not they take hold.
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
It's a complex diagnosis, but now that John knows exactly what bacteria are involved, he can figure out the right combination of antibiotics he needs to treat the problem.
You're not unduly worried, although we need to be cautious at this point with Ben's foot.
Yeah, you need to be cautious. He's got a lot of healing to achieve. Given that he's a chimp, given that it's looking better now than it had done, say, a few days ago, I think there's every chance it will heal up. But you're not out of the woods yet. No.
Yeah, okay.
Only time will tell if the antibiotics will work and prevent the infection from spreading to the rest of the group. On the other side of the park, it's time for the marmosets to be weighed.
Good boy.
The team want to make sure that they're all fit and healthy. Unlike the chaos in the orangutan nursery earlier in the day, Keeper Toby has everything under control.
What we're doing here with the boy marmosets to actually get them to sit on the scale is known as target training. Good boy, Marcel. Basically, we dip the target, which is temporarily a stick. We dip this into some food, which in this case is marmoset gum, which is one of their very favourites. It's sort of part of their natural diet. They eat a lot of gum and sap. And then we position them in the enclosure where we want them to be, in this case on the scales. And when they come to the target and touch it, they get clicked and they obviously get to lick the reward off.
Fluctuations in a marmoset's weight can have serious implications, so they're monitored more frequently than the orangutans.
These guys weigh only sort of 300-400 grams. It's very important that we know what sort of weight they're at, because losing 50 grams to us might not seem a lot, but to them it's quite a big portion of their body weight. Particularly in this bachelor group where we're doing introductions at the moment. Stress can obviously cause animals to lose weight, so it's equally important to make sure that all the boys in this group are staying at constant weights.
However, there's one animal that Toby hopes has lost weight. Mad Max has been on a diet since he arrived. Before moving to the park, his previous owners liked to feed him sugary treats, which didn't do much for his waistline.
Max weighs 330 grams. He was 380 the first week he arrived here, so he has lost some of that weight. He has been obviously a lot more active than he used to be. He's now got a big enclosure to move around in. He's been lots of play and wrestling and chasing with Marcel. On top of this, he now gets a sort of proper marmoset diet. There's no sweets or things involved, so he eats all their healthy food, fruit and vegetables with the odd treat. So he's doing well, and at 330 grams, he's only slightly heavier than Marcel, who is about the same age. He weighs 320 grams now, so Max seems to be doing very well with his diet.
So it's good news for Max, who's looking fit and healthy, and the rest of the troop appears to be in tip-top condition too. Back at the old Capuchin house, a bunch of geriatric housemates are checking out their new outdoor enclosure. This is the first time that these ring-tailed lemurs and stump-tailed macaques have ever lived together, and it's clearly going to take some getting used to. Their first challenge: can they share feeding time without a fight? The keepers have provided them with some fruity ice lollies. They've been fixed at different heights to suit the feeding habits of both species and to make sure everyone gets something to eat. Lemurs like to feed in the trees, whilst macaques like to forage around at ground level. But macaque Gerald seems to have forgotten he's supposed to forage at ground level. He loves his food so much, he's willing to climb to get to it. The macaques are on a strict diet, so any snacks between meals are a real treat, and Gerald is certainly going to make the most of it. Sharing isn't the macaque's strong point. Grumpy Roland isn't about to let his new housemates anywhere near his lolly. Gerald's fingers are bent and arthritic from his days living in a lab, so he's finding it difficult to grasp onto the fruit. But eventually the lollies start to melt, and the lemurs are able to use their dexterous fingers to dislodge some of the best bits. So when the fruit begins to drop, it gives the other residents a chance to get their fair share. Both of the new residents of this house are clearly strong-willed and determined to get their own way. But together, they may just benefit from one another's company. Next time, Chimp Ben loses one of his infected toes, but the staff are relieved.
Yeah, the vet's advice was that really they couldn't do anything surgically for Ben because the whole of the foot area is an open wound.
I'm bigger than you, OK?
Jeremy has a run-in with feisty female orangutan Linga. Oof. And it looks like another chimp has been struck down by the bacterial infection.
We want her to be able to breathe, obviously. If it swells much further, that will be very difficult.